Merry Christmas, happy holidays from the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Nate Bauer back with me, having some fun today in the lead up to Christmas on Saturday. We're doing an end of the season sort of thing. Season superlatives. Best of Penn State football for 2021. So Nate, how you doing? Are you ready to have most improved and most congenial? Most likely to succeed?
As soon as you said best of Penn State football 2020-21, I thought this is a joke. We should just end the show. Let's just cut it.
Everyone's so cynical. It's it's a good time to reminisce on the good times. There were like five good games.
Listen, they've infected me. I always use the same example. It's like Ghostbusters 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm New York City just enveloped with pink slime.
You're one of the people you're one of the people getting off the Titanic.
That's correct.
Is it the first one or the second one?
I think that's the second one. The second one is when your love lifts me higher and higher, right?
Yeah, and the Statue of Liberty's walking around, and that's the one with Vigo the Conqueror, right?
Yeah, but the whole city is infected with sludge, and it makes everybody miserable. They're really mean to each other.
Yes,
and so it gets even the best of us.
I remember being really scared of that movie as a kid. That movie freaked me out because of the painting. He was
with the eyes that follow you.
Yeah, didn't like that. So, there's some good things. There's some good football players. There's some good things to look at for Penn State football. So I wanted to get into some of that.
Sure.
I've got a list of superlatives that I came up off the top of my very crowded head. So if I've missed anything, we can add them in as we go. But I got a couple of categories. Best play, best season stat line. We can go offense and defense. A lot of this is going to be some repeats because, as you just pointed out, a little thin here and there for there's not going to be a running back that's going to be really mentioned during this show. So I want to start with, let's start with, I guess, best play of the season. What do you think? What comes to mind when I say best play for Penn State football on offense?
Oh man, it's not. I mean, it's not a deep pool. I mean, certainly Jahan Dotson had his moments that would stand out. I mean,
we're off to a fast start. I mean, let me go first. Seeing as this is all my idea, let me go first. So the play that kept coming to mind for me was the touchdown that Sean Clifford threw to Jahan Dotson in the back of the end zone against Auburn. And let me say why the play was right. What I mean by play. So the offensive line blocked that. Clifford stayed in the pocket. Nothing was open. So then he scrambles out, keeps his eyes downfield, and hits Dotson in the back of the end zone, who makes a great catch for a touchdown. It was a big moment in that game for Penn State football. So both the offensive line, the quarterback, and finally the receiver all made their plays on that particular play, and that's the one that comes to mind for me because that was a game-changing play early on.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, there were certainly some. The problem is when you do a category like this, you want to look at what were the defining moments of the biggest wins for Penn State, and I don't think that there's any question that Wisconsin and Auburn meet that criteria, right? Those are big wins any way that you slice it. But offensively, right? I mean, you could point to Dotson's touchdown, right? I mean, his 50-yard touchdown, whatever that was, whatever the number was, in that Wisconsin game, is kind of being a game changer. But I mean, he just beat the coverage, right? It wasn't necessarily a spectacular play. I guess my only point is so many of Penn State's instances through the season offensively were you just didn't have a lot to choose from. The Dotson touchdown against Maryland.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the 80-yarder, the 82-yarder.
That's a great one to bring up. That's a great one to bring up because, again, it was great scheme. It was a great play by the offense, like from the quarterback protection, all that standpoint. It was, I think that's a good one there. And it was
Sure.
also put them up 21-14, and
Yeah.
it widened the gap in the game they had to win. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, it's that Dotson would be at the center of most of those plays. I think is a fair evaluation.
We got to save a couple of his catches for best catch of the season.
Sure.
So I was trying really hard to find like a Parker Washington catch or something like that. And
he had a few.
Yeah.
But no, it's I mean, I'm looking right now. I just a cheat sheet for myself. I did a mid-season highs and lows, right? Where I took every game I do as the game is happening, I fill in the highs and lows from the game. So the best pass, the play of the game, what have you. And I really took and this is it speaks to the nature of Penn State's season, how things played out, that I think that if you took a mid-season highs and lows and an end of season highs and lows, the first half of the season highs and lows would virtually be the same in the second half of the season. They would carry through because there just weren't that many in the second half.
Yeah, they got 2 wins against Maryland and Rutgers. So you're not really going to feel the same way about those that you would about plays against other teams that, mattered early in the season as far as ranking and prestige and all those things. So best play on defense. What comes to mind for you, the best play on defense?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in terms of impact, I think that Brisker's interception and Tig Brown's interceptions, the way that they finished the Wisconsin game, have to be up there. Just because, and it's funny, James Franklin mentioned it with the Manny Diaz introduction the other day, how turnovers are low hanging fruit, right? That you want to be able to capitalize on them more. But the way that they did this season, the way that they executed and finished obvious turnovers, that was an improvement on the year before. That was an improvement on 2020 when they had lots of opportunities to make interceptions, force fumbles, what have you. They just weren't able to complete those plays. This year, in that moment, with Wisconsin threatening to really to win the game, either one of those opportunities for Wisconsin could have been a 17-16 win for the hosts, right? And so for Brisker to take advantage and make that interception, for Tig Brown to make that interception, those interceptions late in that game, those have to be up there.
So I'm going to go with a random play from the Ohio State game because I watched it earlier today and it comes to mind. A couple things before I get to that play. I wanted to come up with a Jaquan Brisker play at some point in the season, but late in the year, the final 4 games, last month of the season, he was targeted 4 times. Yeah. That's it. And 3 of them came against Maryland, where he allowed 6 yards on 2 catches. So people just stopped throwing at Brisker over the final month of the season. But Ellis Brooks in one play, because I did a scouting report on him earlier this week, and one of the plays that stuck out to me was the play against Ohio State, where Jackson Smith-Njigba gets away from Daquan Hardy, and Ellis Brooks comes off his assignment in coverage. He was covering the running back on the boundary. So basically the running back's the corner. He comes off his assignment and puts his shoulder through the football and through the player to get a pass breakup and a stop for a 3rd down. That was a really good individual play, but it was also part of a good framework for Penn State's defense where they were able to make that play and keep that game close for a long time. But you're right, when it comes to the big plays this season, especially for the offense, they're all dink and dunk plays. There's a lot of like, oh, that was a good 7-yard completion.
Yeah. No, their explosiveness was down. I'm listening to myself, and the objective version of me doesn't like what I'm hearing, because it wasn't that they were scoring 3 points a game.
Yeah.
Right. Like it wasn't this abject failure. They were close in so many of those games in the second half of the season. Obviously they were close at Iowa, their first loss of the season, but so there were plays, there were things here and there. It's just that they found themselves on the losing side of so many of those. Like the defining plays of all of those games were made by Penn State's opponents.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and not like a ton of defining plays, but just right. If I'm thinking of the best defensive play of the year, it's Ohio State's sack, force fumble, return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That was the game. That was it. So no, I just it's a dicey proposition for this team given the way that things played out this season.
What's your, and I'll go first on this one because I want to give you some time to go look something up so that you have a good answer here. But best stat line of the season. There's one answer, and I'm just giving you time to go Google the stat line for Jahan Dotson. But I'll give you the defensive answer. Ellis Brooks had 80 tackles. He had 45 stops, and he had 264 yards given up on 35 catches. So a solid season in coverage, but the stops, the tackles, and the ability to make plays in the run game at the line of scrimmage, I thought that was the best stat line of the season because I'm saving all of Arnold Ebiketie stuff for later in the show.
Sure. We're just going to gloss right over Sean Clifford? He did. Yeah.
Yeah. Give it.
20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
Yeah.
You can live with that. You want the touchdowns to be higher, obviously, but
yeah,
interceptions is relatively low given the circumstance. No, but yeah, obviously Jahan Dotson, 91 catches for Jahan for 1182 in the yardage plus 12 touchdowns. It's funny that you mention it. I did a series in the summer for this very thing, previewing the season where it was better or worse, right? Like just a very basic proposition of were stat lines, whether it was for individual players or position groups, were they going to be better or worse than they had been the season before? And just given his 2020 season, right, it's kind of hard to think that Dotson would have been better, but he was. He was. I mean, certainly in 12 games, I think he finished with 8 touchdowns last. I'm trying to bring it up right now. I think he finished with 8 touchdowns last season. Let's see here. Last year, he was it's actually almost the same. 8 touchdowns in 9 games last year, 52 catches. If you play that out, he would have finished with fewer catches last year than he did this year. But yardage wise, 98.22 yards per game last season. And I think it's virtually identical. I think it's 98 something for this season as well.
Yeah. He was everything for the Penn State offense. And one of the things that I was impressed with too is given the fact that he had so many bubble screens and short completions, his PFF tracks yards per route run. So the number of yards you get versus all your routes. So if you're just running empty routes and you're just out there, it doesn't mean you're productive per play. So he got 2.42 yards per route run, which is a solid number given the inability to get some of those deep passes in the deep passing game and the big plays didn't come till the end of the season. And he was doing so much work in the short area, catching bubble screens and 6-yard checkdowns and stuff like that. Moving on to best run blocker. Best run blocker, Nate. Do you want me to go first again, or do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, can I say Jahan Dotson? Is that
okay? Sure. Why not? I don't. So this is actually interesting that when I went back and I looked, I had not done a deep dive into individual players, so some of the season-ending wrap-up stuff. And Brenton Strange actually ended the season as a very good run blocker. His PFF grade was 79.9. He the first month of the season was rough. And that's after the Villanova game. We had the conversation about the tight ends not blocking well and some of that particular conversation over the first month where they weren't living up to that. But after that, he was a solid contributor. The difference is the tight ends get lumped together and you may not notice what he's doing versus the fact that Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson are still struggling a little bit, and the offense couldn't run the ball at all. So you don't really care if one tight end is blocking really well when the whole thing's a mess. But that's good for him, and it was a major step forward for him.
He and I know that we talked about this in July or August. I had an interview with him before the season where he very specifically brought up his run blocking as having been a failure last season. It had not been what he wanted it to be, and he knew. I mean, look, like the NFL is very obviously a selling point in this program for Penn State, right? Penn State's coaches are telling these guys and instructing these guys like, hey, these are the things that, you need to do them for Penn State as a team to be successful. But if you want to make it to the next level, this is what has to be there in your game. And at that next level for tight ends, for the guys who aren't like Gesicki, right? You have to block.
Yep.
You have to, right? I mean, that's what Kittle does. Like it's that style of play, and
that's
Strange
who
knew that
that's who he's going to be at the next level if he wants to be there. Is he's got to be the George Kittle that can block and is an undersized receiving tight end. Not that Kittle is particularly undersized, but Brenton Strange kind of fits that mold. And that's the conversation you and I had, is that's his potential, that's his body type. And the funny thing is the receiving never really came to the surface here. Looking at his season-ending results when it comes to his receiving, 19 catches for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns. One of 3 or one of 4. Let me pull that up. One of 3 or one of 4. One of 3 in contested catch situations. So he wasn't getting those jump balls down the field. He wasn't even getting targeted with them, because he wasn't even getting a good target for the quarterback. So that's got to be the next thing that steps forward for him in 2022. Do you have a guy that you thought improved as a run blocker from your observation this season?
I mean, I'm doing the same thing you're doing, and I'm looking at PFF stats, and the thing that I think that stands out, and I don't have anything to compare it against necessarily, but it probably isn't a good sign for your team that your starting guard is the highest rated run blocker at number 7, right? Like that of their run blocking grades, it's Devin Ford, Bryce Effner, obviously Effner playing in a limited type of role there on the offensive line. Brenton Strange, Landon Tengwall, who obviously played really in one game extensively. Tyler Warren, another tight end. Malik Mega, who has 10 snaps for the season. Right. And then Juice Scruggs, right? Like with a 68.9, which by your definition, as we've talked about previously, virtually means average. Right? Like that's the baseline.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, part of the problem that you accurately described, is there's nobody that was really good, which is why I went with Tyler Warren. The cheat here is that I'm getting to go first. But that the other guy I would point out is Landon Tengwall, because in the limited reps that we've seen from him, he was good. But as you accurately described, of the leaders in this group, none of them are any of your starters. So that's going to be the thing you have to see going forward, is some of those guys we haven't seen. And in the bowl game, especially what we talked about earlier in the week, those guys got to show something. They got to show something for Penn State to feel good going into the offseason. So I want to bring up our next. We're just going to skip pass blocker. I was going to do both, but I don't think people are happy about.
Don't be mean.
Don't be mean. Exactly.
It's the holiday season, T-Frank.
Best catch. Let's get to this one. Best catch of the season. To your recollection, what was the best catch that you saw?
Let's see here. I think it's the same one that you have. Jahan Dotson, Indiana. Is that right? Are we looking at the same thing?
I can go to a different one if you want, but yeah, that one.
Back of the end zone, north end zone for a 8-yard touchdown. Yeah,
that's the one I was going with.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, look, like here's the thing. He had a catch in the Auburn game that was
that was the one I was gonna pick. That was the one I was gonna let you have this one and then go with that one.
Well, and it was for nothing, right? Like, I mean, it was a 10-yard gain, a 12-yard gain, something like that.
It was on first down.
Right. It was a spectacular catch. It really brought to focus the reality that dude catches anything in the zip code. Like
Yep.
his ball skills were and are so improved that, right, like it's tough to tell sometimes for some receivers when look, like uh, you could talk about Allen Robinson and contested catches, like those types of things that really stand out in your mind
Yeah.
as, okay, this guy does this particularly well. Well, Jahan Dotson, it gets glossed over, I think, because it's what you come to expect the more that you see it. But
Yeah.
he just catches everything, right? They don't have to be one-handed, circus catches. That just, if it's in the area, he comes down with it. And definitely he had more than a handful of those this season that probably would not have been receptions for other
For
guys.
most guys. I'll give you another one just so that we have another option here on the table. It was in the Michigan State game before it got too snowy when they put, and this happened actually 2 weeks in a row. I'll go back to one where you don't have the field conditions. But his play on the cover 2 shot for a touchdown, his ability to go up and get that one was spectacular. His best route of the season was Maryland put a safety on him in the slot, and he had a double move for the first touchdown of the game that he was open by 10 yards, and it wasn't like a busted coverage where somebody went the wrong way. He made that guy go the wrong way because of the way he ran that route. So sometimes the best catch doesn't have to be contested, or it doesn't have to be a highlight reel missed throw that you bring in. The easy ones are the best ones because you just blew by that guy with technique and route running. Best individual performance in a single game. We'll go offense and defense, and I'll let you start this one if you have any in mind.
Okay. Sean Clifford against Auburn.
Yeah, that's a good one.
28 of 32 passes for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. And the interception was, if I'm recollecting it correctly, the end of the first half, right? He got blown up.
It was he was throwing the ball, trying to just throw the ball up and get a contested catch situation at the end of the half. It was basically a punt.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't take any points off the board. There was no impact on it. It just ended the half for Penn State. And I think they were even getting the ball back after that.
It's just so funny seeing, funny might be the wrong word, but it's just so interesting seeing the reaction to him now, given the struggles that he went through in the middle of the season when he got hurt, versus what he was for those first 5 games of the season, including the first quarter of the 6th game when he did get hurt at Iowa.
Yeah.
He was really good.
Yeah.
Like he was a good college quarterback. If Sean Clifford could have extended the performance of those first 6 games out through the rest of the season, and look, like I understand it's fair game. If you're in the game, if you're playing, at that point you're fair game for criticism, and you have to be held accountable for what your play is. But I think generally speaking, most people in a lot of college football programs would take his performance of those first 5 games in a quarter extended.
If he had played, to extrapolate that out, if he had played that way throughout the rest of the season, he was maybe the better quarterback against Michigan State in terms of, I think, some of the big throws, but when they came, dictated that Penn State wasn't going to win that game. Outside of that, he would have been the best quarterback on the football field in all but maybe the game against Ohio State. I don't think he would have outdueled that offense. But that would have put Penn State in the position to win all of those games, especially the Michigan game. I firmly believe if that Sean Clifford from the first month of the season showed up against Michigan, that guy beats Cade McNamara, because there wasn't anything that McNamara was doing offensively that was really all that impressive. My best individual performance.
Sorry, no, I don't want to interrupt you. It's just, it gives me so much joy and pleasure to know that we both think of one of the 4 college football playoff teams
that they're a total fraud
as being Stone Age football. Anyway,
yeah. Yeah, and I know that doesn't have a good look for me, but I just don't care. Like, it's not good football. I was going back and watching some of the tape again this week, and that Penn State knew where every run was going, and they stopped the majority of them. They just got too many attempts because the offense couldn't keep themselves on the football field. Anyway, my best individual performance, it was actually going to be the Michigan game, but I'm going to go all the way back to week 1 for Arnold Ebiketie. His introduction to the Big Ten, he destroyed the Wisconsin offensive line, and I want to pull that up if I can get the defensive grades here quickly for him. Because that game was impressive. I think he had nine pressures.
His best sack wasn't a sack, right?
It was they forced 2 intentional groundings, 7 total pressures. He didn't have a sack, but he got 6 hits on the quarterback. Of course, 5 tackles in the game. So he was on the other side of the line of scrimmage for the entire game. And that set the tone, I think, for the rest of the year for him. And that was the best individual performance that I think anyone has put on the defensive side of the ball until he almost topped himself. And we'll get to that in a little bit during the Michigan game, because that might be something that comes up a little bit later. Let's see. Most improved player, offense and defense. I'll go first, and I'll look at the offensive side of the ball. I was encouraged from the improvement of Parker Washington throughout the season. He wasn't bad at any point, but he really started to hit his stride in the second half of the season, where he wasn't just making routine plays. He was starting to go above expectation and establish himself as a second threat that you had to pay attention to on the offense. There's a couple games early on where he had some drop issues. There were some issues with maybe not being in the right position or making the play he should above just getting the catch. That changed over the second half of the season.
Yeah. I could be misremembering this. I thought Kevon Lee played pretty well down the stretch.
He did. He did.
So maybe you find a spot for him as most. I don't know. I mean, it was just. Man, the quarterback makes things go, and the offensive line makes things go.
Yeah.
And when they fell apart a little bit, it was tough, I think, for some of those other pieces to necessarily play up to their full potential.
Well, part of the remembering of Kevon Lee taking a step forward is he had double-digit carries for the final 4 games of the season. He had only done that 3 times in the previous 9 or 8. So he had 8 carries for 50 yards against Maryland, 20 carries for 88 yards against Michigan, 13 for 41 against Rutgers, and 15 for 79 against Michigan State. So yeah, that's a strong end of the season when he was getting 8 carries a game before. And that once he took over that, establishing himself as the number 1 back, I think he showed an improvement there as far as production and reliability. So I want to move on to our final category here of the best sack. I saved this one because, to me, this was the play of the season as well. So I'm going to enter it for best sack and play of the season. Arnold Ebiketie's sack of Cade McNamara in the 4th quarter, where it should have been a game-winning play for Penn State football. He sets the team up in the red zone. That play individually was one of the best pass rushes I've seen from a Penn State football player in the last 4 years or so, where it was technically perfect, it was fast, it was explosive, it was a game-changing play.
Yeah, I mean, it won the game for them.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? One more.
It should have won the game for them. Any other superlatives you can think of? Any other fun things that we missed out on?
Yeah, no, you didn't mention best contract. I thought that was a big element this season.
Oh gosh. I was like, we don't know anything about their NIL stuff. Oh yeah, that one. Oh.
Yeah. No, the elephant in the room. Best offseason hire, Manny Diaz. I like him more now than I did. And I liked him originally on the hire, but after hearing his press conference, I was really, really impressed. I actually watched it again today and came away even more impressed. I think he's a guy who knows what he's looking at, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of this is just, you know, the game, you know, what's important, what's not. He has the experience behind it, but no, I'm just being funny and not very funny. So that's about it.
Well, I still think we delivered today. Whether it was good or bad, we delivered something. That's for sure. Happy holidays. Hopefully this was a fun trip down memory lane. I know that there's a lot of hard feelings for Penn State football fans about this season, but it was something we all experienced together, and I want to take one last look back before we head into the new year. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. This is the BWI Daily Edition. Merry Christmas. We'll talk to you next week.